How do you even know about that?
I know everything, Eddie.
You do?
Everything about you.
How?
I am inside your head. You are a loser, Eddie.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. On this Christmas Eve, we are going to do a comic book review, and it's not going to be a jolly comic. This is, obviously, judging by King in Black #1, this is one of the most hopeless stories in the history of comic books. I kid. That was obviously just the first issue. The second issue has a little bit different tone. Obviously, this is from superstar creative tandem Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman. We've been leading up to this in his Venom series, Absolute Carnage. Big things popping here. I'm calling this like a 3.5-star comic. It's bordering on a highly recommend. This is a solid comic, solid recommend in my opinion. And obviously here with me to actually review a comic we don't do this often enough is El Percherino himself, the Poobah Comics. Perch, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on, and Merry Christmas to you and everybody.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas. I hope everyone is doing well. It is officially Christmas in my house because we are just after midnight when I'm recording this. But it should be Christmas Eve back in the States and most places that actually view this. So, what did you think of King of Black #1? Just real short.
No, it was an event comic. I mean, it was a very kind of definition of a summer blockbuster type movie. I mentioned this before. It's not a lot of depth in this comic, but it is a lot of action. And I think a lot of writers outthink themselves in saying, well, I'm going to do an event comic, but I need to provide some depth and some complexity and defy some expectations and do all. And in reality, it's a summer blockbuster. You think about like a Michael Bay movie. Just try and knock it out of the park with some action. And the first issue did that. Absolutely.
So that's the thing I do like about this. King in Black, what Donny Cates is saying is what you get. It's a big, event comic with the entire Marvel universe in peril. Now, before we get into the details of issue number 2, I do want to say, if you haven't subscribed, hit the bell for notifications. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Give us a thumbs down if you don't. Either way, we want to hear your thoughts on King in Black #2. Were you a big fan? Are we grading it too low or are we grading it too high? We definitely want to hear your thoughts. And how's your Christmas going? Let's know that too. We're excited to hear about that.
Yes.
So the first thing I want to talk about, Perch, is the art by Ryan Stegman.
Yeah.
It still feels like Stegman, but it's not quite as smooth as I remember from like Absolute Carnage and when he was illustrating Venom as like the full-time artist. Have you noticed that too?
I have. It's scratchier. I can't tell if maybe it's the colorist doing something or there is
same colorist. It's Frank or Martin.
That's true. There is something odd about it. It's not bad. I think the art
is like more angular.
Yeah, it's a little bit more angular and it's a little bit just rougher of a sketch style. I don't mind it at all, but it is different. It does look, the way it feels to me is like the book was slightly rushed, and it's not as a huge drawback to the art, but it just looks like there was some corners cut, especially when you get some of the talking scenes. It's characters look like they're rendered pretty quickly. It still looks great, but something different has happened. I'm with you. I'd love to know what's being done differently.
Yeah. I still really enjoy the art, but it's not quite as crisp and vibrant as we were getting in Absolute Carnage and Venom, in my opinion, but it's still very good. Obviously, This is one of the money shots. There are several money shots in issue number 2. We're going to see another one on later, but in the opener, we get right back to where we were. Eddie Brock has been thrown off a building after being having his Venom symbiote removed from him by Knull. He's on death's door. Spider-Man arrives on the scene. And he's saying, telling him, you got to protect my son. And he turns around and boom, we get another money shot. We got Cyclops, Captain America, Thing, Storm. We've got, the Avengers and X-Men teaming up, as essentially Carnage symbiotes. Well, they look like that's the Carnage symbol, but it's supposed to be Knull. And just really cool stuff.
Yeah, they've been nullified, I guess, is the term Marvel's going to use there. I like how they all look like they're grinning, ready for action, except Miss Marvel, who just is like, why am I here? She's just unhappy zombie at this point. But it's I mean, we've seen certainly the heroes go bad before. This is a pretty, I'd say, common plot device for comics to go to. But I mean, this is clearly going to be kind of what all the tie-ins are going to deal with. It's going to be, you know, the good heroes against the nullified heroes and all that. And it's interesting. I mean, I suspected this was coming, but they managed to hide a lot of this from the solicit. So it's cool to see.
What I do like about it, like I said, the opening, you get back in there and it does feel hopeless. You know, Eddie's about to die. Spider-Man's going to be destroyed by these guys. But this issue is all about maybe restoring some hope to the story. And I do think Donny Cates is effective in that. The first thing we get is the Human Torch arrives. He's like flying through dragons. He arrives on the scene and essentially is like, hey, you take Eddie, you get out of here, and I'm going to cover your guys' escape. And he's like, you can't do that. You know, you need to save yourself. He's like, you know, I want to do something, you know, something cool, something heroic. You get out of here and I'm going to save the day. So we got our kind of first like heroic moment, you know, saying that there is a little bit of hope left in this very, very dark event. Yeah,
I mean, they've got to give reasons. You've got to give some reasons why the heroes can fight back. If they don't have that, it's gonna be a pretty grim, pretty lousy event. So you have to give these little moments of where, you know, where hope can come from. And this was the Torch's sacrifice, obviously tapping into the long relationship between the Human Torch and Spider-Man, and it's buying time. I mean, you know, as they identify in the first issue, they need Thor. Thor is what they believe their key to how to solve all this, but he's missing in action. And so it's get Eddie, Brock back to wherever. So hopefully they can buy themselves some time.
Yeah, so that's kind of the next act, and we see there's a team together and they're ready to fight. It's led by Iron Man. We see Namor show up on the scene. Spider-Man goes to Dylan, finds him in his bunker. He's like, you need to come with me, kid. Is your dad dead? Not when I left him. And he wants to show him his dad, you know, who's obviously being looked after by Iron Man. And we see that there are things happening. Blade, I think, is negotiating with the X-Men, and they're like, we're not letting people through the portals. You know, you might bring the nullified with you. And we see that Tony Stark has devised a plan.
Yeah.
And it's a very Tony Stark plan. He's decided, in order to save Eddie Brock, I need to go commandeer a dragon and and connect him and the dragon together to save him. You know, because he was connected to Venom.
Yeah, it is a Tony Stark plan. The whole back and forth here about here's what we're going to go do. You saw Namor, Submariner, shows up and kind of warns them they don't really know what they're in for. I mean, we're still at this point where the heroes are reeling, trying to, you know, figure out what's going on. This entire issue is a bit of a cool down issue, of course, from the first one. But this is a 5-part event. So we are almost at the halfway mark of this comic, which is kind of crazy to think about. If we've lived through so much decompression, I mean, if you think about the pacing of this in comparison to Ten of Swords or other events, this whole Tony Stark plan would be 5 comics of trying to go get a dragon. And here it plays out about 2-3 pages. And so this comic moves you along really crisp and quick.
A very, very brisk pace. And we do see there's like some liaisons, you know, from Tony's team. Blade's going out there trying to negotiate with Dracula. Who else we got? Submariners going to the Mariano Trench to, you know, bring, what's the name of that group?
It's I always mix this up with
Aquaman, right?
Aquaman. Yeah, Aquaman has the trench, I believe. Mm-hmm. And this is the black. God, I don't have my comic book sitting here with me, but anyway, it's a different group. But I'm the entire time reading this, I'm like, man, you guys. At some point, one of you, either Aquaman or Namor, you really need to separate some things. It's like
out. The exact same entity.
Yes, we're gonna go down and fight the scary monsters who are good at fighting in the dark.
So they're going out and they're recruiting all of the most dangerous things that are left that haven't been nullified yet. And we do get this money shot. This is the best shot of the entire comic book. It's when Tony Stark decides to go fly into the dragon's mouth and use extremists to take control of him and bond him to Eddie Brock.
Yeah.
Ridiculous, but comic book ridiculous fun.
Yeah, that's what it should be. Again, this is a comic book ridiculous event. That's the entire point of what's going on. And of course, in doing this somehow infects Iron Man, which is a little bit unclear to me how how the armor is getting transformed. But I mean, all these characters that get nullified get cool heavy metal costumes, and it's kind of, you join up with Knull, you get a leather jacket, you get some chains. It's like going to Hot Top.
This is the thing I don't understand. It's like, this dragon is not Venom.
Right.
He wants them to, you need to get your powers back. Like, this isn't Venom. Like, every symbiote has its own a different personality. What makes you think they're going to be bonded together well at all? So feels like a shot in the dark. And obviously it was a shot in the dark, and it wasn't very good. As soon as they start bonding him, I believe Eddie Brock starts dying, and they're trying to pull this symbiote off. And then that's when Dylan decides to reveal that maybe he's the key to victory, and it's not Eddie Brock. Maybe it's not Thor, but it's actually Dylan Brock who has the codex. I believe he's probably technically the son of Knull or something like that. He's like, with his mind, just blows the symbiote and like disintegrates him off of his father.
Yeah. And they've been keeping this. I mean, this is one of the plot devices that would have been good, I think, to remind the readers of. But they've been keeping his powers somewhat under wraps this entire time. They haven't. So the other heroes, this is a surprise to them. They don't have the obvious, like, hey, this would have been a good thing for you to mention, like before I went out and tried to fly into a dragon. But it's all good. But yeah, this is the plan. Of course, doesn't work. I mean, this comic, it's classic. The heroes are trying to fight back. They're getting stopped by the villains at every turn. Things they're slowly losing ground step by step. There are moments of hope. Now the hope's going to center around the boy. We know Knull wants Dylan. So it's setting everything up for, some pretty big stuff. But right now, the earth is surrounded. Things are in very bad shape. We've lost half the Fantastic Four. Looks like Iron Man's getting his heavy metal armor there. So this comic is about moving, setting everything up, I believe, for acts 3, 4, and 5.
Absolutely. This is a popcorn comic.
Yes.
Leave your brain at the door. You're not going to get a ton of like character moments or anything in this, but you are going to get badass action, and you're going to get some really cool splash pages, and there's going to be some fan service. A character that's never been bonded with the symbiote's going to be nullified, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's for sure. It's so Eddie Brock may or may not be dying. We know he's not, because we see him walking around in future issues. So no spoilers there. But yeah, this is a movie event comic. That's fundamentally what it is, and it is, like I said, I think the more you try and think about it, the more you try and go, okay, let's do a deep dive deconstruction analysis of this comic. That's a mistake. You're gonna hate it. Just enjoy it. Just enjoy it. Call it a day. This isn't going to be a comic that we'll be remembering 20 years from now as one of the best comics of the era. It's not going to have that kind of a feel. But this is what I'd argue event comics probably should be. They shouldn't try and be more than this. They get themselves into trouble when they do.
Yeah. So what do you think the end game is? The end game, Dylan Brock is the new Venom, or is the end game we learned Dylan Brock is essentially Knull?
Yeah. I think that I think that so my prediction in all this is that they're going to defeat Knull, of course, and the Venom Eddie is going to become the new kind of leader of the symbiotes, that he's going to basically assume the control. So kind of wrest it away from Knull, but he'll choose to use it for good or for different. But it's basically going to power up this character to a pretty massive degree. I mean, for far from being kind of the jealous journalist of Peter Parker, he's going to be like this universal,
like a god.
Yeah, I think that's where we're heading with it, which I'll be curious if that helps the character or kills it. That's the funny thing about all this.
But do you think Dylan Brock has big plans at Marvel Comics in the future, or do you think he's just the Deus Ex Machina that's going to save the day here?
I mean, I have a hard time believing that they're going to elevate that character up. I think that he's a supporting character to Venom, and I think he's the get out of jail free card that they're going to try and use here. I think the power goes to Eddie, but they could.
Maybe Dylan saves the day, but he can never. He loses all his power doing it.
Yeah, something like that. Or I mean, they could go the route of having Dylan ascend to become, the universal god, and so. Eddie basically loses his son in the process, and that could be the tragic ending. I guess there's a couple ways they can do it, but Either way, I don't think we're going to see like a regular appearance of Dylan in the future, but we'll see.
Very interesting stuff. So that's the review. King in Black. I recommend it. It's a fun comic. You're not, it's not a great character study or anything like this, but it's fun popcorn action. You're seeing really bombastic, crazy comic book stuff. Iron Man flies into a dragon and takes control of it, and then his Iron Man suit turns into like, a King in Black armor. So it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this event. Like I said, Donny Cates is essentially delivering exactly what I expect.
Yeah, I think I'm with you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.